High cholesterol is not the cause of heart attack and stroke. It is one of the biggest misconceptions in the history of medical science. Welcome to my YouTube channel on cholesterol and heart disease. I am Dr. Sanjay Kumar Shrestha, a professor of cardiology at Kathmandu Medical College. I have been conducting research on cholesterol for the last several years, have presented several talks at national and international cardiac conferences, and have published several articles in medical journals on this subject. Cholesterol phobia has taken hold of our society, and it's time to unpack this misconception. For decades, we've been told that high cholesterol is the villain behind heart attacks and strokes, leading to a widespread panic. Medical guidelines from organizations like the American and European Heart Associations have set a normal range for cholesterol levels, and anything above that sends people into a frenzy. But here's the truth. Cholesterol is not the enemy we've been led to believe. It's essential for our bodies, playing a crucial role in hormone production and above all, for the maintenance of the cell membrane integrity. On the contrary, it is the deficiency of cholesterol in the vascular cell membranes that leads to atherosclerosis and heart attack and stroke. Yes, this seems to be very much the opposite of what you have been hearing from medical communities and doctors. But this is the truth, and I'm going to explain in detail based on scientific publications and experiments. Cholesterol plays a crucial role in our bodies, acting as a key player in the structure of our cell membranes. Picture this. Our body is made up of around 30 trillion cells, each surrounded by a complex membrane. This membrane is a bilayer of phospholipids which behaves like oil in the heat and butter in the cold. Without cholesterol, we would melt like butter in the summer and would be solid blocks in winter. Cholesterol helps keep the membrane stable and maintains its integrity. Within this membrane's bilayer are not only cholesterol molecules but also proteins that serve as channels, signaling messengers, and receptors, all guiding the cells on how to function. These channel proteins, signaling molecules, and receptors are essential for the cells and tissues of our body to work in harmony and proper order. Cancer is one example of cells no longer functioning in harmony, but rather acting independently. In the same way, when this cellular order is disrupted, diseases can arise. These vital proteins are anchored in structures called lipid rafts, which are clusters of tightly packed cholesterol and other lipids floating in the membrane. Imagine groups of people standing on rafts in the sea. As long as the rafts remain intact, the people stay together, but if the rafts break apart, the people scatter. Similarly, when lipid rafts lose cholesterol, they break down, and the crucial proteins they hold in place become scattered and disorganized. In fact, experimental studies have shown that when cholesterol is removed, both the cell membrane and lipid rafts fall apart. So rather than vilifying cholesterol, we should recognize its essential role in keeping our cellular world balanced and functioning properly. The inner lining of our blood vessels, known as vascular endothelium, is a remarkable one-cell layer that faces constant mechanical and biochemical stress. Imagine the relentless wall shear stress from blood pressure and the oxidative stress from free radicals and diabetes-related compounds. These mechanical and biochemical stresses result in endothelial cell membrane damage and dysfunction. In addition, the heart muscles exerting external pressures as they contract and relax may further damage the delicate endothelial lining of the coronary arteries that supply the heart muscles. Therefore, coronary arteries are in a unique position to receive stress from both within and without. This constant strain makes the endothelial cell membranes vulnerable, necessitating a continuous supply of phospholipids and cholesterols for repair. While every nucleated cell can produce their own cholesterol, the vascular endothelium requires much more due to its unique stressors and vulnerability. In addition to its internal source, the vascular endothelium relies on external sources of cholesterol that circulates in the blood. These cholesterols come from our food as well as from the liver. Even if we do not eat any cholesterol-containing food, liver manufactures sufficient amount of cholesterol. Because cholesterols and phospholipids are fat molecules, they do not dissolve in the water component of the blood, so special proteins are required for their transport. LDL, a low-density lipoprotein, and HDL, a high-density lipoprotein, are merely vehicles for transporting these essential fat molecules. Contrary to popular belief, LDL isn't the villain we've been led to believe, and HDL isn't the hero. Yes, very high levels are associated with cardiovascular diseases, but they aren't the root cause. I will explain later in my talk why very high levels of cholesterol are associated with cardiovascular diseases like heart attack and stroke. But the pathophysiology is very different from what we usually hear from the medical community. Think about it. Firemen are always at the scene of a fire, but that doesn't mean they start them. Similarly, just because cholesterol is seen in the atherosclerotic lesions of vascular endothelium doesn't mean they are the culprit. The relationship between cholesterol and heart health is more complex than the simple guidelines suggest. We need to dive deeper and understand that correlation doesn't always equal causation. Understanding this complexity is crucial. The story of cholesterol being labeled as villain began over a century ago with the work of Nikolai N. Anichkov, who observed cholesterol buildup in the hearts of people who had suffered heart attacks. Fast forward to 1948, when the famous Framingham Heart Study, one of the largest and longest running studies in cardiology, revealed that high cholesterol, along with diabetes, smoking, and high blood pressure, significantly increases the risk of heart attacks. However, the study's data also reveals something interesting. When plotted on graphs, the risk forms bell-shaped curves. This means that many people with high cholesterol levels, according to definitions by American and European heart associations, never actually experience heart attacks. In fact, there is a large overlap between the cholesterol levels of those who have heart attacks and those who don't. The risk only becomes dramatically higher when cholesterol levels rise above 300 mg per deciliter. This extreme elevation is usually seen in people with genetic condition called familial hypercholesterolemia. In these individuals, the cells lack enough LDL receptors on their membranes, the gateways that normally help pull cholesterol out of the bloodstream and into cells where it is needed. When these LDL receptors are missing or insufficient, cholesterol cannot enter the cells and remains in the bloodstream, leading to extremely high cholesterol levels in lab reports. But here's the irony. While cholesterol builds up in the bloods, the cells, especially those lining the inner walls of blood vessels, end up with too little cholesterol. Without enough cholesterol to maintain the strength and structure of cell membranes and lipid rafts, these essential cellular structures start to break down. This weakens the lining of blood vessels, triggers inflammation, and eventually leads to atherosclerosis, the real cause of heart attacks and strokes. This brings up an important possibility. The Framingham Heart Study may have conflated two very different groups of people, those with familial hypercholesterolemia and those without. Different studies estimate that familial hypercholesterolemia affects about 1 in 200 to 1 in 300 people, although this varies widely between populations. For example, among French Canadians, it can be as high as 1 in 80. People with this condition have a unique way in which atherosclerosis develops, setting them apart from the general population. This raises an interesting question. If we were to exclude people with familial hypercholesterolemia, those with cholesterol levels of 300 mg per deciliter and above, from the study, would the two bell curves, those who have heart attacks and those who don't, completely overlap? In other words, would there be no clear difference in cholesterol levels between people who have heart attacks and those who don't? The Framingham Heart Study, therefore, may need to be reanalyzed after excluding the population with familial hypercholesterolemia to better understand this relationship. Finally, you might be wondering, if cholesterol is so important for maintaining the strength and integrity of blood vessel linings, then why do doctors prescribe statins to lower cholesterol levels in the blood? It's a great question. There are indeed many large studies showing that statins help reduce heart attacks and strokes in people with coronary artery disease. But here's something interesting. Several other drugs that also lower cholesterol haven't shown the same benefits. So what makes statins different? To understand this, we need to look at how statins actually work. Every cell in our body can make its own cholesterol through a process called the mevalonate pathway. The key player in this process is an enzyme called HMG-CoA reductase. Statins block this enzyme, which reduces the cholesterol levels inside the cells. Now, our cells are smart. They know cholesterol is essential for keeping their membranes strong and stable. So when the cholesterol inside the cell drops, the cell senses this through special proteins called SREBPs, sterol regulatory element binding proteins. These proteins respond by triggering the production of more LDL receptors on the cell surface. These LDL receptors act like tiny catchers, pulling cholesterol out of the bloodstream and bringing it into the cells, exactly where it is needed. Most of that cholesterol goes to the cell membrane to keep it healthy and strong. So ironically, statins lower the cholesterol in the blood, but at the same time, they increase the amount of cholesterol being taken up by the cells, especially the cells lining the blood vessels. This helps repair and maintain their membranes, keeping them strong and reducing the risk of heart attacks and strokes. In other words, the real benefit of statins may come from increasing cholesterol where it's needed most, in the vascular endothelial cell membranes. To wrap up, I'd like to say that blaming cholesterol as the main cause of heart attacks and strokes is one of the biggest misunderstandings in medical history. In reality, cholesterol is an essential building block of our cell membranes. Without enough cholesterol, especially in the cells lining our blood vessels, these membranes cannot repair themselves from the wear and tear caused by biochemical and mechanical stress. These stresses are what lead to damage in the blood vessel lining, causing inflammation and eventually leading to atherosclerosis, a process where the body tries to heal the damaged vessels by forming plaques. The real danger comes when these plaques erode or rupture, leading to clots that can block blood flow and cause heart attacks or strokes. The famous Framingham Heart Study may have mixed together two different groups of people, those with a genetic condition called familial hypercholesterolemia and those without. This may have led to misleading conclusions about cholesterol and heart disease. I believe this study needs to be reanalyzed with this distinction in mind. So, should you worry about your cholesterol numbers? Only if your total cholesterol is extremely high, above 300 mg per deciliter, which is likely due to familial hypercholesterolemia. I will be sharing more on that condition in one of my upcoming videos. Finally, I want to leave you with this important advice. The best way to protect yourself from heart attacks and strokes is to keep your blood vessels healthy. That means reducing the mechanical and biochemical stresses on your body. The two biggest ways to do that are by controlling your blood pressure and blood sugar. Start by keeping your salt intake very low from a young age to maintain healthy blood pressure. Also, aim for little or no added sugar, as excess sugar leads to harmful compounds called advanced glycation end products, AGEs, that damage blood vessels. In a future video, I will explain how AGEs interact with the receptors known as rays, causing damage, a process called the age-rays reaction. Thank you for watching. Please share this video if you found it helpful. If you have any questions or would like to discuss this further, please feel free to email me at sanjaykumar70@gmail.com. Thank you.